First encounter. I met Damon Hayes for the first time in an incredibly humiliating situation. It was 1 a.m., raining hard, and I was crouching in front of the off-campus laundromat with a busted suitcase and all my underwear scattered across the wet concrete. Literally. One red boxer had even hooked itself onto someone's skateboard wheel. "I don't mean to offend you," a low voice said from somewhere ahead, "but this is the strangest college entrance I've ever seen." I looked up and froze for about 3 seconds. Tall, broad shoulders, black baseball jacket soaked through with rain, dark hair falling across his forehead. The kind of face you'd see in early 2000s American cinema. Not flawless, but enough to make someone look twice. Or 3 times. He crouched down and picked up the red boxer with 2 fingers. "I'm guessing this is yours? Please don't look at it. Hard not to. It's neon red. I already hate you." He laughed. That laugh would later become the thing that unraveled my entire life.
"I'm Damon."
"Maddox. Freshman. Do I look that young?"
"No."
He glanced at my exploded suitcase. "You just look like someone having a very bad week." I sighed. First day on campus. My roommate took off with his girlfriend. I got lost, my phone died, and then this damn suitcase exploded. Damon nodded like he was listening to a podcast. "Could be worse." "How? At least you haven't cried yet." "I'm very close." He laughed again. And then, right there in the cold September rain of Seattle, he took off his jacket and draped it over my pile of clothes to keep them dry. That was the moment I thought, this person is genuinely dangerous. Northvale University was enormous. The kind of campus with its own lake, its own stadium, and a handful of old buildings that looked like Hogwarts, the American modern version. It took me nearly 2 weeks to memorize the route to my communications class. Damon, on the other hand, seemed to belong there. Junior, architecture major, president of the design club, the kind of person professors called on by name like they'd known him for a decade, and also the kind of person nearly everyone on campus had heard of, especially because Damon Hayes was famously good-looking. I figured that out on our first lunch together in the cafeteria. A girl dropped her entire fork when Damon walked past. "I get it now," I said. "Get what?" "You're the school's hot guy." Damon raised an eyebrow. "That sounds insulting. You're even pretending to be humble, which makes it worse." "I'm not being humble." He bit into his pizza. "I know I'm attractive." I burst out laughing. And the terrible thing was, I liked that about him. Damon didn't try to be the center of attention. He simply was. Confident, comfortable, effortlessly magnetic. I was the complete opposite. I was the type who overthought every text message before sending it. The type who pretended to be fine while panicking inside. The type who lost sleep over a single glance. Especially when that glance came from Damon. We got close faster than I expected. Maybe because Damon had a gift for making people feel at ease around him. Or maybe because I started spending nearly all my free time with him. I helped Damon polish his presentations. He helped me fix my old car that kept dying at the worst moments. We studied late at the library together. Grabbed food together at 2 a.m. Sat on the roof of the dorms listening to music after brutal exam days. And then things started getting dangerous. That was when I noticed I'd memorized the scent of Damon's cologne. The way he always rolled up his sleeves when he was sketching. The way he'd unconsciously rest his hand on my waist whenever he passed behind me. Small, stupid things, but enough to make my heart lose its rhythm. I tried to ignore it. Until that night in November. "I think I like men." The words fell out of my mouth after my 3rd beer. We were sitting behind the dorms on the hood of Damon's old Jeep, feet propped up, the cold Seattle night pressing in around us. Seattle at night always felt cold in a way that made you want to lean into someone. Damon went quiet for a few seconds. I forced a laugh. "You can congratulate me, you know?" I already knew. I spun toward him. "What?" "I've known for a while." "How?" "You look at Chris from the hockey team like you want to marry him." "Oh my God. I figured you knew how obvious you were." I buried my face in my hands and groaned. "Please kill me." Damon laughed softly. Then he took a sip of his beer. "I like men too." Every sound around me seemed to stop. Distant cars, music from the frat house, even the wind, all of it gone. Are you serious? Yeah. You never said anything. Because I don't like explaining my personal life to people. Then why tell me? Damon looked at me for a long moment. His eyes always had a way of making it hard to breathe. Because it's you. God, I hated how hard my heart reacted to him. After that night, everything shifted. Not by much, but enough for me to notice. Damon started touching me more, his hand on my back when we crossed the street, his fingers brushing lightly over my wrist when he handed me a lighter, his gaze lingering longer than it used to, as though an invisible thread had appeared between us, one we both felt but neither of us dared name. Until the architecture department's Christmas party. I hadn't planned on going, but Damon dragged me along. Please come, he said. I need one normal person there. Your friends aren't normal? They argued about fonts for 2 hours. Okay. That does sound terrifying. The party was packed. Warm yellow lights, indie music, the smell of alcohol and cologne all mixed together. I went to grab a drink when a blonde guy stepped in front of me. You're a freshman, right? Yeah. Goo. I hadn't even had time to respond when an arm appeared around my shoulder from behind. Damon. Sorry, he said to the other guy. He's with me. I heard the irritation in his voice clearly. The blonde shrugged and walked away. When it was just the two of us, I looked up at Damon. Were you just jealous?
No.
Liar. Yeah. He exhaled. A little. The air shifted in a strange, electric way. My heart was pounding uncomfortably hard. Damon, do you know what the worst part is? What? I really want to kiss you. I think I stopped breathing. Then do it. Damon stared at me like he was fighting himself. Then he pulled me into a dark corner beside the staircase. The first kiss happened there. Not gentle. Not slow. The kind of kiss that's been held back too long and finally breaks open. Damon gripped my waist tightly. I could barely stay standing as he kissed me deeper. Everything around me spun. The smell of whiskey, warm breath, music fading in the distance. And Damon, only Damon. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine. Both of us breathing hard. Damn! His voice came out rough. I laughed, still trembling. That's your reaction after a first kiss?
No.
Damon traced his fingers along my neck. My reaction is knowing I'm about to do something very stupid. How stupid? His eyes darkened. You're going to like me more than you should. My heart seized. And you? Damon was quiet for a few seconds. Then he smiled barely. That's exactly the problem. Damon avoided me for 3 full days after that kiss. 3 days. It doesn't sound long. But when you've gotten used to texting someone from morning until night, used to seeing their name pop up on your screen every few hours, 3 days of silence feels like someone suddenly pulling the air out of the room. His last message had been, made it home, sleep, freshman. Then nothing. He didn't reply to the memes I sent. Didn't show up at the library. Not even at the coffee shop near the architecture building where he practically lived during deadline season. By the 3rd day, I was genuinely furious. I marched straight into the architecture building at nearly 10 p.m. and found Damon among a forest of models, drafting paper, and students who looked like they hadn't slept in 2 weeks. He was sitting on the floor, pencil in hand, eyes fixed on his blueprints. Still annoyingly handsome. Great. I crossed my arms. I finally found the body. Damon looked up. The moment he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Maddox. Oh, you still remember my name? Maddox.
No, genuinely, I'm curious.
I stepped forward. Is ghosting someone after you kiss them a tradition in the architecture department? A few nearby students started paying attention. Damon stood up immediately. Come with me. I don't. Maddox. That low-register voice always made me lose my footing. Damn it. He pulled me out into the quiet hallway behind the studio. The door had barely shut before I turned to glare at him. What the hell is wrong with you? Damon sighed, running a hand through his hair. I was just thinking. For 3 days. I needed time. For what? To decide whether kissing me was a mistake. He went quiet, and that silence hurt more than I expected. I laughed, hollow. Wow. Maddox. It's fine. I stepped back. I get it. You don't. Then explain it. Damon looked at me for a long time. The cold white hallway light cast his face in shadow, making his eyes look darker than usual. I don't do relationships. I frowned. What do you mean? I mean I don't date. Ever. Never. I genuinely stared at him. You're serious? Yeah. What about people before? Nothing serious. Why? Damon smiled faintly, without warmth. Because it always ends badly. I didn't know what had happened in his past. But for the first time since I'd known Damon, I saw something that looked a lot like defensiveness. Like he'd built walls around himself a long time ago and never took them down. I'm not asking you to marry me, I said quieter. You don't understand. Damon stepped closer. You're the kind of person who would make me want more than I should. My heart skipped a beat. That sounds like a compliment. It's not. Then what is it? He looked straight into my eyes. A warning. The air between us was suffocating. I should have walked away right then. Honestly, I should have turned around, preserved what was left of my dignity, and stayed as far from Damon Hayes as possible. But then he touched my wrist. Just barely. Barely anything. And I was done. I still want you. Damon's voice dropped. I hated how instantly my body responded to that. Damon. But I don't want to promise things I can't deliver. I tried to keep my voice steady. So what do you want? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said the words that changed everything between us. Friends with benefits. I laughed, disbelieving. You're serious? We work well together, Damon said. We like being around each other. And clearly there's something between us. You're pitching this like a group project. The corner of his mouth curved slightly. I'm trying to be realistic. What about me? I asked. What if I want more? Damon's expression stilled for just a fraction of a second. Then he answered, Don't. God. I knew it was a bad idea. I knew it clearly. But Damon was standing too close. The familiar scent of his cologne was doing things to my head. And the way he was looking at me right then, like he was fighting himself just as hard. I have rules, I said finally. Damon raised an eyebrow. You have rules? Yeah.
I'm listening.
No sleeping with anyone else. Fine. No disappearing for 3 days like an asshole. Fine. And if either of us starts having feelings, we stop. Damon said immediately. My chest ached, because of how fast he said it. Like he'd prepared for that answer from the beginning. All right. I held out my hand. Deal? Damon stared at my hand for a moment, then laughed. You're shaking hands over a friends with benefits arrangement? I like to keep things professional. He shook his head, but took my hand anyway. Damon's hands were always warm, and always made it impossible to think straight. Deal, he said. You should have stayed exactly there. No love.
No strings. No heartbreak.
Just two college guys turning to each other on lonely nights. At least, that's what we told ourselves. Until that Friday night. The night Damon pulled me into his off-campus apartment for the first time, and looked at me like he was about to ruin everything. Damon's apartment was on the second floor of an old brick building that looked pretty grim from the outside but was unsettlingly beautiful within. Just like him. Warm yellow light. The smell of coffee and cedarwood. A vinyl shelf against the wall. Architecture blueprints scattered across the dining table alongside a few energy drink cans. I thought a hot guy's place would be Messier. I took off my jacket and looked around. Damon locked the door behind me. I find that offensive. You should. Want something to drink? I need something strong to forget that I just agreed to be friends with benefits with you. The corner of Damon's mouth curved. Whiskey. Perfect. He handed me a glass and leaned back against the kitchen counter watching me take a large sip. The air between us was strange enough that I could hear the ice clicking against the glass. Normally, I talked constantly around Damon, but tonight my mind felt pulled taut. Because now it was just the two of us. No friends. No library. No background noise. Just Damon in a black t-shirt, standing less than 2 meters away, looking at me in a way that made my skin feel warm. I still can't believe you're actually doing this, I said. Doing what? Friends with benefits. I took another sip. You seem like the type who makes someone fall for you and then disappears. Damon laughed softly. Should I take that as a compliment? Up to you. He stepped closer. I don't want to hurt you. That's not very convincing. Yeah, he admitted, completely unbothered. You probably shouldn't trust me. My heart started racing again because of that infuriating honesty. Why have you never seriously dated anyone? Damon went quiet for a moment. I tried once. I was slightly surprised. And he cheated on me. The air went still. This was the first time Damon had ever mentioned an ex.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. He shrugged lightly. It was a long time ago. But you haven't forgotten. Damon's gaze rested on my face longer than usual. I don't like giving someone else the power to hurt me. That sentence made my chest ache. Because for the first time I understood. Damon wasn't some bad boy who toyed with people's feelings for sport. He was just someone who had stopped believing in love. And somehow that made me softer toward him than anything else could have. I wouldn't do that to you, I said quietly. Damon smiled, barely. Maddox. He moved a little closer. That's exactly what makes you dangerous. Before I could ask what he meant, he raised his hand and touched my face. Damon's fingers were always warm. Warm enough that every time he touched me, everything else faded out. You can still change your mind, he said, voice low. I don't want to. You sure? I looked straight into his eyes. Ask me one more time and I'm leaving. Damon laughed. Then he kissed me. This time it was slower than at the party. Not a breaking point anymore. More like the kind of kiss designed to torment you on purpose. He held my waist with one hand, the other threading lightly through my hair. My heart beat so fast it was almost painful. I hated how easily Damon could make me lose my footing. When I pulled him closer, Damon swore softly against my lips. Jesus. I laughed, unsteady. That's a positive reaction, right? You talk too much. You haven't seen anything yet. I think I'm about to. My face went hot immediately. Damon laughed low in his throat like he was enjoying my reaction very much. Then he lifted me onto the kitchen counter. You genuinely enjoy messing with me, don't you? Enormously. I changed my mind. Too late. He leaned in and kissed slowly along my jaw and my whole body went rigid. Damn it. I'd never felt this way with anyone. Not just the physical pull, but because it was Damon. The way he looked at me like I was something worth noticing. Even when he was always pretending he didn't want that. You're genuinely awful, I said, breathless. Yeah. And way too good looking. Keep going. I hate that you know you're good looking. Damon laughed out loud again. Then he rested his forehead against my shoulder for a moment, like he was steadying himself. That moment was unexpectedly tender. Not heated. Not urgent. Just two men standing very close together in a quiet kitchen at midnight. I nearly forgot this was only supposed to be casual. Until Damon stepped back. Do you want to stay tonight? My heart skipped. Perfectly ordinary question. But the way he asked it didn't sound casual at all. I thought the rule was no sleepovers. Where did that rule come from? I've seen movies. Terrible source. I laughed. And in the end, I nodded anyway. We didn't sleep much that night. Not in a bad way. We just talked until nearly sunrise. Lying in Damon's bed, legs tangled under the blanket, trading ridiculous stories like two people who had never learned to sleep. I told him about growing up in California, about my parents' divorce, about how I'd once wanted to be a musician before I realized I had no talent beyond talking too much. Damon told me about his childhood in Chicago, about hating winter, about the moment he first realized he liked men, watching a Marvel movie and immediately developing a crush on the lead actor. I knew it. I grinned. You're exactly the type of gay who has a thing for muscular guys. And you? I'm attracted to third-year architecture majors with psychological baggage. Damon laughed so hard his whole chest shook under my hand. That moment made my heart go completely soft. And the terrifying part was, I think Damon felt it too, because his smile slowly disappeared. His gaze settled on my face and stayed there. Too long. Maddox. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you're making me want to break the rules. Before I could figure out what he meant, Damon's phone buzzed on the nightstand. A name lit up on the screen. Ethan. Damon's expression went faintly cold almost immediately. An uneasy feeling crept through my chest. Who's that? Damon turned the screen face down. My ex. The room fell completely silent. And for the first time since all of this started, I realized I might have stepped into something far more complicated than I'd imagined. I tried to pretend I didn't care. I really did. I even managed a fairly natural shrug. Oh, as if the name that had just appeared on Damon's phone wasn't making my stomach turn for no good reason. Damon placed the phone face down on the nightstand. You don't have to look at me like that. I'm not looking at you anyway. Maddox. I'm just a little surprised. I pulled the blanket up to my chest. I thought you hated your ex.
Ido.
Then why is he texting? Damon exhaled slowly, leaning his head back against the headboard. Ethan's not great at disappearing. Unlike you, who's an expert. He glanced at me sideways. You're still not over that? Give me at least another week. Damon laughed quietly. I hated that all it took was a single laugh from him for the tension in the room to dissolve. What does he want? I asked. Don't know. You didn't read it?
No.
Oh. I raised my eyebrows. Very unbothered of you.
I'm busy.
Busy with what? Damon turned to look at me. His gaze traveled slowly across my face and stopped at my mouth. Maddox. His voice dropped. Don't ask questions you already know the answer to. Damn it. I felt my ears go hot immediately. You're terrible at flirting. And you like it. I haven't confirmed that. Let me check then. He leaned closer. This kiss was much softer than before. The kind you trade when you're half asleep near dawn. Slow. Warm. Dangerous because it felt too much like something people in love would do. I nearly forgot our arrangement entirely until Damon pulled back and murmured, "Stay casual, remember?" My chest gave a small, quiet ache. He said it like a reminder to both of us. The following weeks passed in a way that was simultaneously wonderful and terrible. Wonderful because Damon became something close to a constant in my life. Terrible because I was starting to want that far too much. He kept a spare toothbrush in the bathroom for me. Knew exactly what I liked every time we ordered food. Would pull me into his lap when we watched movies alone in his apartment. Small things. But it's always the small things that ruin you. Especially when Damon still consistently maintained. We're not dating, right? I said, eating cereal. People who aren't dating usually wear each other's hoodies though. Damon looked at the oversized black hoodie I was wearing. You took that from my closet. You didn't stop me. I like seeing you wear it. My heart did something stupid again. I hated what my body did around him. One evening toward the end of December, I went with Damon to the architecture department's design showcase. Big mistake. Because that night I saw exactly how well known he was. People were constantly greeting him. Girls flirted with him openly. A senior guy even put his arm around Damon right in front of me like they were incredibly close. I'm starting to understand why you don't want a relationship, I said as we stood getting drinks. Because you're addicted to attention. Damon smiled. Are you jealous? I don't have the right to be. The moment I said it, the air shifted. Damon looked at me for a moment. Then he pulled me into a quiet corner near the hallway. Don't say things like that. Like what? Like you think you don't matter. I smiled thinly. Damon, we are literally friends with benefits. And you keep acting like my boyfriend and then pretending you're not. His expression darkened. I told you from the beginning. Yeah. I nodded. I know. That was exactly the problem. I knew. I knew Damon hadn't promised anything. I knew I'd walked into this with my eyes open. But the human heart is stupid like that. It always wants more. I need some air, I said and turned to leave. But Damon caught my wrist. Maddox, I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. I was quiet for a moment. Then I looked back at him. Have you liked anyone since Ethan? Damon went very still for just a fraction of a second.
No.
What about me? That moment stretched on. The music faded. The voices of the crowd blurred away. Just Damon looking at me with an expression that made my chest ache. Then he let go of my wrist. Maddox! And I understood. I didn't need to hear the rest. I laughed quietly. Yeah, got it. It's not that simple. Nothing's ever simple with you. I left the showcase early that night. And for the first time since I'd known Damon, I genuinely wanted to stay away from him. But life always has the worst sense of humor. Because exactly 1 week later, I came down with a fever and was stuck in bed at the dorms. The brutal kind of winter illness that makes your whole body ache and your head spin. My roommate had gone home for the holidays. I was curled up alone with a pile of tissues and useless cold medicine. Until the door to my room swung open at almost 11 p.m. Damon walked in carrying 2 bags. I'm annoyed at you, he said the moment he saw me. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? I'm not dying. You were texting like a zombie. I thought I was being quite charming. You're sweating like you ran a marathon. I laughed weakly. Damon set down the bags and pressed his hand to my forehead. His expression immediately creased with concern. For God's sake, Maddox. I'm still attractive, right?
No.
Brutal. He shook his head, but the corner of his mouth still curved slightly. Then Damon took off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and began taking care of me like it was the most natural thing in the world. He prepared the medicine, made soup on the dorm's disaster of a kitchen stove, made me drink water despite my constant complaints. By around midnight, I was sitting up in bed hugging my knees, watching him clear the cold medicine off the desk. You don't have to do this. Damon didn't look up. Yeah, I know. Then why? This time he looked at me. The faint yellow light made Damon's face look softer than usual. Because it's you. My heart sank a little further. I hated this. Hated the way Damon kept saying things that sounded like love and then acting like he wasn't allowed to mean them. Do you know what the worst thing about you is? I asked quietly. You take care of people too well. Damon went silent. Then he walked over to my bed. Too close. I told you not to like me too much. I looked up at him. Tired from the fever. Tired from the feelings. Tired from Damon himself. Too late. For the first time since we'd known each other, I watched Damon not know what to say. Damon stood still for a long time after I said that. Far too long. I could almost hear my own heartbeat in the small, cramped dorm room. Don't say things like that when you have a fever, he said finally. I laughed, rough and hoarse. You think I'm delirious? I think you're not thinking clearly. Then what are you afraid of? Damon didn't answer, and that silence said everything. He was afraid, not of me, but of his own feelings. I'm not asking you to love me, I said softer. I just want you to stop pretending you don't feel anything. Damon's jaw went tight. That was his habit whenever he was tense. I'm not good at this. At what? Having someone to lose. My chest tightened. That was the first time Damon had been genuinely honest with me to that degree. No half-joking deflection. Just Damon. Exhausted, guarded, and far more fragile than he ever wanted to show. I'm not going anywhere, I said softly. He smiled, faint and a little sad. You don't know what you're capable of doing to someone, Maddox. I'm just a freshman with a serial addiction who's failing statistics. I'm being serious. So am I. The air between us went gentle in a strange way. Then Damon sat down on the edge of my bed. He smoothed my hair back very lightly. Go to sleep. You'll stay? Yeah. All night? Yeah. I looked at him for a moment. You're terrible at casual. Damon laughed softly. Shut up. I woke up around 4 a.m. My throat still hurt, but my head had stopped spinning. and Damon was asleep beside me. That moment made my heart go dangerously soft. He was turned toward me, one arm still resting on my waist, like even in sleep, he was afraid I might disappear. The light from outside the window fell gently across Damon's face. None of his usual infuriating confidence. Just a 22-year-old who looked worn down by deadlines and feelings he didn't know what to do with. I knew I shouldn't do what I did next, but I was sick and weak-willed, so I reached up and touched his cheek lightly. Damon opened his eyes almost immediately. "You're actually a creep." His voice was rough from sleep. "I was looking at you. That is literally the definition of creep." I smiled. Then Damon pulled me closer instinctively. It happened very naturally. Too naturally. A few seconds later, we both stilled at the same time. Because this didn't feel like friends with benefits anymore. It felt like love. And we both knew it. Damon slowly let go first. "You should go back to sleep. Do you always run away when things start to feel real?" His eyes darkened. "Maddox."
No, I'm genuinely asking.
I propped myself up on one arm. "Do you ever get tired?" "Tired of what?" "Pretending you don't want this." The room was quiet for a few seconds. Then Damon asked very quietly, "What if I do?" My heart stopped for a beat. "What? What if I want you more than I should?" I stared at him. "Then why do you keep pushing me away?" Damon laughed, very softly, but it sounded sad. "Because you're young. I'm only 2 years younger than you. You still believe love is worth risking everything for. And you don't." He didn't answer, and this time I didn't push, because I understood. Damon didn't lack feelings. He just lacked faith. Winter break came faster than I expected. Campus was nearly empty as students went home for the holidays. I stayed because I didn't want to face another awkward Christmas with my dad after his divorce. Damon stayed because of a relentless internship at an architecture firm in the city, which meant we practically lived together for 2 weeks. The biggest mistake of my life, or the best, depending on how you look at it. We went grocery shopping together, argued about whether pineapple belongs on pizza, watched terrible Christmas movies at 2 a.m. I even discovered that Damon was an intensely clingy sleeper despite spending his days acting effortlessly cool. "I don't cuddle," he muttered one morning when he woke up and realized he was wrapped around me like a koala. "You literally have your legs locked around me." That was an accident. A 6-hour accident. Damon threw a pillow at my face. I laughed until my stomach hurt. Those days were beautiful in a way that frightened me, because I started imagining things I had no business imagining. Like what it would be like if this were actually a relationship. If I woke up beside Damon every morning. If he were really mine. Damn it. I was done for. I realized it on Christmas Eve. We were sitting on the living room floor eating Chinese takeout because neither of us could be bothered to cook. The TV was playing some sappy holiday movie. Damon was wearing a loose gray sweater, hair still messy from the shower. He looked so beautiful it made me want to lose my mind. "Do you ever think about the future?" I asked out of nowhere. Like 5 years from now." Damon slowed his chewing. "Yeah. What do you see?" "A stable job." He shrugged. "Money. A decent apartment. That's it. What else do you want me to say?" I looked down at the Coke in my hand. "I don't know." Damon was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What about you?" I should have lied. Should have said something easy and light. But instead I looked at him and was far too honest. "I think I want someone to come home to." Damon's expression stilled. I saw it clearly, just for a second, but long enough to know the words had landed somewhere real. Then, as always, he put the wall back up immediately. "That sounds very domestic." My chest went cold. "Yeah. Maddox. It's fine." I forced a smile. "Forget it." Damon looked at me for a long time, like he wanted to say something. But in the end, he just lifted his beer and took a sip. And I began to understand a painful truth. Damon could want me, could care about me, could even like me more than he ever admitted. But love? That was something he would fight to avoid with everything he had.